Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and some of you may also listen to the Health and Wellness Podcast and know that I host that one as well. And last week, we had our 200th episode of that podcast, and I decided to do an episode on interesting health questions, interesting health facts, strange facts that you may or may not have known about your body, or questions that you may have had. And I thought, hey, some of these are kind of strange, kind of odd. That sounds like weird news to me. And so I decided I would play that episode here as well. If you've already heard it on the Health and Wellness Podcast, my apologies. But if not, then you can learn some strange, odd, what does our intro say? Weird, odd. I can't even remember. Facts about the human body. So enjoy this episode, and we'll be back to our regularly scheduled weirdness next time. And just as a quick note, you will be hearing the intros and outros into commercials and stuff saying health podcast, but you really know that it's the Weird News Podcast. I know you do. Hello and welcome to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I cannot believe that we are on our 200th episode. How crazy is that? We've been doing this for a while. I, of course, have not been here for the entire time. I've only been your host off and on, and then in the last few months, but I enjoy doing this podcast, and I've learned a lot about various health topics. So I was trying to think of something to do a little different for our 200th anniversary, or 200th episode. For the 100th episode, if you remember, Stacy and I did our favorite health tips so far, or something like that. And I was trying to think of something else to do, and I was like, 200 interesting facts about health? That's not a half an hour podcast. And I don't really want to drag that out over like 4 podcasts, because that would be a little crazy. But it did make me think, what are some interesting, maybe weird, maybe interesting or weird facts about health that maybe you've always wondered about, or maybe you've wondered if they are true, or if they are those old wives' tales, or what have you. So we're going to look into some of those. Actually, if you have ones that we don't talk about today, I would love to hear them, and maybe we can do another show at a different time about your questions. So it just kind of depends on what we talk about and what you are interested in hearing. So our first interesting or odd fact about our bodies is in the form of a question, and it is, do your feet actually keep growing with age? And you hear this one a lot. I also hear, your ears and your nose keep growing as well, but some people are wondering if our feet continue to grow with age. Mine have pretty much stayed the same size for a long time, but I know I've had friends who have had babies, and their feet were a different size after they were pregnant than they were before they were pregnant. Well, it turns out that there is some basis to this. As we age, the tendons and ligaments in our feet actually weaken, and so this can cause our arches to flatten, and maybe our feet to get a little longer and wider. It's usually about one shoe size. for the people that it happens to. It does not happen to everyone. And this article says that it's that one shoe size by about age 70 or 80. It doesn't say anything about pregnancy, but it does say that it does not happen to everyone and that there are different contributing factors that can cause this, such as being overweight, having diabetes, etc. So, interesting fact about your feet. They do sometimes, it doesn't happen to everyone, but they do sometimes get larger as you age. Moving on to our second question, it is, what's up with that stomach in your throat feeling when you are on a roller coaster? That feeling when you read about it in books a lot. My heart was in my throat, or my stomach was in my throat, or something along those lines. And I don't ride roller coasters much, but I have ridden them multiple times. And I know that feeling of where everything feels like it just shoots up into your esophagus or somewhere north of there. Well, it turns out that this is actually true. Your insides are actually shifting. Creepy. When a coaster comes over its crest and then, slows for that second to really make you go, what was I thinking? And then shoots downward, the seatbelt keeps your butt in place, but some loosely connected internal organs, such as your stomach and intestines, do get a little quote unquote airtime. Yeah, they actually move. How weird is that? But you're not damaging anything, and they go back to their rightful places, within a matter of, I would assume, seconds. It doesn't say. But your nerves detect the movement, which registers as though your stomach has jumped into your throat, which is just really weird. I mean, just that whoosh feeling of, it turns out that there is stuff jiggling around inside your body cavity. Your stomach is not actually going to your throat, but it is moving a little bit, doing a little roller coaster jiggle or something, however you want to call it. Our next one is not true in my house, but the question is, how come women always seem colder than men? I see a ton of comics on social media about this, and this is not true in my house. My husband is way colder than I am. He's always been way colder than I am. I'm especially warmer now that I'm experiencing the joys of hot flashes. But he jokes that he doesn't even want to leave the house if it's under 50 degrees outside, and he likes to sleep with a million blankets. I used to, when I was younger and I lived in Montana, I could sleep in flannel pajamas with flannel sheets and lots of blankets. It was awesome. But we also slept. I like the house cold around me. My husband likes the heat up and about 92 blankets on the bed. So I'm constantly throwing the covers off. He's constantly burritoing himself in covers. It's funny. But the answer to this question is that women have a higher percentage of body fat and conserve more heat around the core. That helps keep our vital organs nice and toasty, but not our extremities. When your hands and feet feel cold, then often so does the rest of your body. Research also suggests that women have a lower threshold for cold than men. When exposed to the same freezing temperature, the blood vessels in women's fingers constrict more than men's do, which is why they turn white more quickly. So this may or may not be true for you, or maybe it is. I would assume that this is one of those things that is different for everyone, but there are some things that indicate that it's more common for women to be colder than men. Oh, this next one makes me sad. Is quote unquote old person smell real? That's just sad. Okay. I mean, it's all something that we've experienced. The answer is yes. And the article says, get ready for these strange facts. There is also a distinctive middle-aged person smell and a young person smell, according to a recent study. I mean, I know babies have a smell, but that's because they don't do much. They eat and poop and sleep, and they have that like baby powder, sour milk smell about them that's actually quite delightful. The research has found that older people have a less intense and more pleasant scent than the middle-aged folk and young whippersnappers, which is probably not what you were expecting. So, I think we associate old people smell with like nursing homes, which isn't the old people, it's the nursing homes themselves. One thing that I've noticed in my work in various elements of my life is that there's a certain perfume that some older women wear that is just disgusting. To me, personally, I'm not saying that it is disgusting. It's just, one of those smells that makes my allergies kick up. But that's not an old person smell either. That's just a preference for, a generational preference for a certain scent. So older people smell better than I do as a middle-aged person. And that also apparently they smell better than young whippersnappers. It does not mention if middle-aged people smell better than young people. I guess it depends on what phase of your life you're in. Are you showering every day? You remember in college when you'd roll out of bed and go to class or whatever it was, and showering was optional. Especially where I went to college. There was, I would take old person smell over some of the people that I went to college with. Oh my goodness. At any rate, it is time to take our first break of the podcast. You're probably thinking, thank goodness I need a break from this woman. When we come back, more strange health facts, questions, etc. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, and I'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now. About some interesting health facts. I don't know that this next one is really a health fact, and I guess it has to do with your body because it has to do with your sense of taste. But the question is, why does room temperature coffee taste so bad? I was actually just having a conversation about this with someone the other day, wherein I said, iced coffee? Great, love it, tastes good. The coffee that goes cold in my cup does not taste good. And, some people have various thoughts on this. Some people don't mind when their coffee goes cold. I had one friend who, I actually posted about this on social media after the conversation. And I had one friend who was like, no, that's my favorite coffee. I love when it goes cold in the cup. And I know my dad will take the coffee from yesterday and microwave it. And that grosses some people out and other people are fine with it. I mean, it's definitely a thriftier way to drink coffee. But so the temperature apparently affects the flavor, even if you brew the perfect coffee. And I drink coffee, but I don't know what the perfect coffee is. I would assume that's different for everyone. Researchers in Belgium found that certain taste bud receptors are the most sensitive to food molecules that are at or just above room temperature. So hot coffee may seem less bitter, and then in turn might taste better if you like less bitter coffee. That's too many bitters and betters. We should throw some butter in there as well. So hot coffee may seem less bitter because our bitter detecting taste buds aren't as sensitive when coffee is hot. Odors influence flavors as well. So when the most bitter hot coffee even the most bitter hot coffee might taste delicious because of its pleasant aroma. Room temperature coffee just doesn't smell the same. And I came to coffee drinking later in life than some, and I still think that coffee smells better than it tastes. I drink coffee and I enjoy it, but I've learned to enjoy it more. After grad school, I had a friend who would drag me to coffee shops to study. Let's put that in quotes. Mostly we would drink coffee and giggle. We did get some reading done occasionally, but I learned to drink coffee really when I was in grad school in my mid to late 20s. So I came to it late, even though I grew up in a coffee drinking family. But it's one of those things that to me smells better than it tastes, kind of like toast. I like toast, but it smells better than it tastes, really. Okay.
how come this next question, who's asking these questions? How come you wake up at night to urinate, but not to do anything else? Like what? Write your thesis? I don't know. Okay, so this says that we are often too embarrassed to inquire about the strange facts of our internal plumbing, but the answer to this question is just plain biology. The sophisticated, intelligent neurons in your gut that control colon contractions, which push out waste. Oh, okay, so I understand what we're asking. We urinate, but don't do anything else. I guess it depends on the person. So those also are influenced by your body's circadian rhythm, the internal clock that wakes you when it's light out and makes you feel sleepy at night. So most people don't have their urge to empty their colon in the middle of the night. On the other hand, the bladder, which acts as a reservoir for the continuous flow of urine produced in the kidneys, can stretch only up to a certain volume before you gotta go. Normally, you can sleep 6 to 8 hours without having to urinate, but certain medical conditions or drinking too much water before bed can wake you to use the bathroom at night. I drink too much water before bed. I'm very well hydrated, but I always have to wake up in the middle of the night. And it doesn't matter if I have to wake up in the middle of the night to do other things, because you don't have to share that with me, and I don't have to share that with you. We're friends, but we're not poop chat friends. Sorry, my mom used to do daycare, and actually, no, this was my sister doing when my sister was a teenager and she was babysitting, and she went to find the two little charges that she was babysitting, and they were in the bathroom. One of them was going to the bathroom, the other one was sitting on a stool next to her, and she said, "Hey, what you doing?" And they said, "Having a poop chat." I love little kids. You probably didn't need to know that. Okay, next question. Why do we have fingerprints? I mean, obviously they're handy, and they've come in handy since we've discovered that fingerprints are different and can be used for identification. But some experts think it's to improve grip, but a British study from a few years back suggests otherwise. I've never thought about them improving grip. Researchers found that a fingerprint's ridges actually made it harder to hold flat, smooth surfaces like plexiglass because they reduced the skin's contact area. Okay, that makes sense. Instead, they think our prints might help wick water off our fingertips or allow our skin to stretch more easily, which can prevent it from damage and help prevent blisters. Also interesting, and that seems reasonable. Other scientists have suggested fingerprints could improve our sense of touch. What we do know for sure is that no two people's fingerprints are the same, even among identical twins, which is always fascinating to me although maybe in the history of the world, two people's fingerprints are the same. I mean, they have now shown that there are, that it's not true about snowflakes. So maybe in the grand history of the world, somebody somewhere along the line, 2,000 years ago had the same fingerprints as I have. But how would we know? And maybe only one finger was the same. What if my index finger is the same as somebody else's ring finger? I'm really just making this up now. You know that, right? Yeah. It's a quirky episode, folks. Let me be quirky. Can achy joints really forecast the weather? Yeah, I mean, we all know someone, and maybe we are someone who's like, man, my shoulder's acting up. I think it's going to rain, or the humidity's going to change. And the answer is maybe. A change in barometric readings may be part of the reason why weather can predict our health. Atmospheric pressure often drops right before bad weather sets in, and this shift can cause body tissue to expand, which can lead to swelling and pain. The effect is slight, but people who have arthritic or inflamed joints may detect the difference. Temperature may have an impact also. In 2007, researchers at Tufts University found that every 10-degree drop in temperature corresponded with a small increase in osteoarthritic knee pain. So every 10-degree drop in temperature. That had to stink for people that live in Montana when it dropped. And it was like in the 90s, 80s and 90s one week, and the next week it snowed. Yeah, that was just recently. Not good. That can't have been good. If we're going from, let's say I think it was in the 90s in Billings, and then let's say it went down to the 20s. That's a 70-degree temperature drop. and that's a 7% increase. I don't, 7% isn't the right word, but 7 increment increase in your osteoarthritic knee pain. That stinks. I'm so sorry, people who have that kind of knee pain. I know my mom says that her knees hurt more when it's raining or when I'm sure it has something to do with barometric pressure, but she definitely notices a difference in the weather. And when it's cold, again, that drop in temperature, she has more issues. My mother-in-law also, same thing. She says the same thing. When it's cold or when it's raining, she has more issues with her knees as well. So let's go ahead and take our second and final break of the podcast. And when we come back, we'll be wrapping up this episode of strange, interesting health facts, queries, whatever you want to call it. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the 200th episode of the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. We are being a little silly today with our topic, which is interesting health facts or questions about health or whatever you want to call it. And our next one is a very common question in that, does holding your breath really help with hiccups? You hear this one a lot. Actually, there's a ton of different facts that are different tricks that people use to help with hiccups. And holding your breath is definitely one of them. One of the oddest ones that I've heard is drinking a glass of water upside down, but I don't understand how that works. Are you upside down? That's just gravity. It's going to spill all over. I've never understood how that one works. Strangely enough, I remember in 4th grade, yes, and it was 4th grade because I remember the classroom I was sitting in. I was reading, those like scholastic flyers or, I don't know, what were they called? But you got them every week and they had different news stories and stuff. And there was a man who had hiccups for like 40 years nonstop, which I still remember that to this day. It clearly had an impact on me because hiccups, sometimes they really, really hurt. But, I've also heard eating peanut butter can help. For me, for some reason, if I can hiccup while I'm yawning, that usually fixes it. Don't know why. So I have to like induce a yawn and then hiccup in the middle of it. It's a timing thing. So this one, as I said, the holding your breath is probably the most talked about. It's thought that if you build up carbon dioxide in your body by not exhaling, it will help stop your diaphragm from spasming, which is what is the cause of hiccups. When your diaphragm contracts involuntarily, it forces a quick intake of breath that's suddenly stopped by the epiglottis, and that's that flap of cartilage located in the throat behind the tongue, what we often think of as tonsils, but it is not tonsils, that's your epiglottis. That closure is what causes the hiccup sound. So this does not actually answer the question. Thank you. That was not helpful. It just says it is thought that if you build up carbon dioxide, but it doesn't say if there's ever been any studies on this. Somebody has to have done a study on this. Come on, people have done studies on everything. So we still don't know. we still don't know if it actually works. I mean, if it works for you, cool. That's awesome. If something else works for you, let me know what it is. If it's drinking a glass of water upside down, please tell me how that works. Send pictures. I need to know. Why do your teeth shift even if you had braces as a teen? Every smile is different, but a lot of this has to do with the loss of the bone behind the gums that occurs with aging. Everything occurs with aging, right? If you lose enough bone, which can be exacerbated by such factors as smoking or gum disease, your teeth can shift. So even though you've had those braces, I know a lot of people still wear a retainer or like something like Invisalign, those kinds of things, even though they've had braces. Things can cause your teeth to shift. It's like, your eyesight changes as you get older. Now that I'm in my 40s, my eye doctors are always like, well, yeah, it's not surprising that my vision's been terrible since second grade, but now I am needing, bifocals and all those good things, and my vision changed drastically in a very short period of time, at least in one eye. It was very weird. I got a new prescription, and then it felt like 2 minutes later. It wasn't 2 minutes later. It was a couple months, but just suddenly, bam, I couldn't see again. And I didn't enjoy that. At any rate, that's just age and genetics and luck, I guess. So next question. Why does our stomach growl? It can be the sound of your digestive juices churning. Yes, this is, if you've ever listen to anyone's stomach after they've eaten a meal, you can often hear, things gurgling around there as things digest. So it can be the sound of your digestive juices churning and stomach muscles contracting as they get prepped for food. To avoid those often poorly timed and embarrassing sounds, eat smaller meals more frequently. Bonus health benefit. This, of course, will also jumpstart your metabolism. So, yeah, you can have growling noises before when your stomach is getting ready for food, but you can also have gurgling, grumbling, mumbling noises when you are digesting as well. Why do I sometimes get side stitches when I run? That pain, that sharp pain in your side when you are exercising hard. So it turns out that your diaphragm gets stretched, pulled, and pounded during a run, which can cause that sharp stabbing pain at the lower edge of your rib cage, usually on the right side of your body. To help the pain pass, slow down, and take more controlled, easy breaths. So there you go. And this one, yeah. Why does armpit sweat smell worse than sweat from other places? Good question. I've got some theories. Your body has two kinds of sweat glands. Most of those on your arms and legs secrete a mix of water and salt, but the glands in your armpits, as well as your groin, release an oily substance, which bacteria love. It's actually the bacteria eating the oil. Ew. See, I just get a visual on that one. That releases the telltale stench. Yep. All right. So bacteria eating the oil that you have excreted from the pores in your armpit and your groin. I just feel like there's a children's book in there. Somebody probably has written that children's book, A couple of more just kind of fun, interesting facts about your body. The average human heart beats around 3 billion times in, again, the average lifetime. So that is 3 billion times. I feel like that's not enough. It seems like it beats more than that. Maybe we're so used to hearing billion now that I guess maybe we just don't think of it as the huge number that it actually is. But 3 billion times in your life, in an average lifetime. You know how your body is mostly water? We always hear that our bodies are made up of mostly water, about 55 to 60% for adults. What you might be surprised to find out is that fluid isn't just in your skin and muscles and organs, but your skeleton too. In fact, bone mass makes up nearly water, not bone mass. Water makes up nearly 1/3 of your bone mass. did not know that. You always kind of think of bones as, dry, like laying out in the desert, kind of dry. But I guess it would make sense that they are, they're moist, they're wet. Sorry, I know people hate that word. So bacteria, we were talking about bacteria just a moment ago. Did you know that you're partly made up of bacteria? Yeah. A 2016 study found that a 154-pound man, 154? Well, that's a very specific number. Okay, so a 2016 study found that a 154-pound man has about 38 trillion bacteria, which is roughly the same amount of human cells. So what's even more interesting is that the bacteria weigh nearly a half pound in total. So that bacteria that's eating the oil in your armpits, it's not alone. There's other bacteria hanging out on your body, in your body, I'm sure. Okay, sneezing. There is a long-standing statistic that a sneeze travels at 100 miles per hour, but newer research has found it's not even close. Still, that sneeze is impressive. A 2013 study found that a sneeze moves at the rate of about 10 miles per hour. 10 miles is not 100 miles per hour, but still, okay. What I would want to know is how far when you sneeze, do you sometimes feel like you sneeze just like really, really far, and other times you don't sneeze that. I don't even know what factors are in there, but somebody should do a study on that. How far does the sneeze go, and is it different in different circumstances? Yeah. Probably enough. What interesting facts do you have about the human body? There are so many of them. We didn't even touch a few of them. And I know that there, so what are the interesting facts that you have heard about the body that you were like, oh, what's that meme that I always see on Facebook and Twitter and, social media about, I was today years old when I learned X, Y, and Z. Well, what's that interesting fact about your health or your body or, whatever that you were today years old, or, you were older than maybe other people were when you found out and were like, did not know that. Let me know. Hit me up on social media. I would love to hear your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this kind of strange hybrid of weird news and health and wellness. And thank you so much for joining me. As always, you know that I very much appreciate you, my listeners. Thank you again for joining me. Join me again next time. And in the meantime, stay weird.